Two friends, Alan Dale and Jerry Carew, who grew up just a few streets apart in St. John's East End, have been separated by Canada's geography for 3 decades. They came together virtually during the pandemic to chat about like-minded interests. Alan lives in PEI and Jerry in Newfoundland. Thriving in remoteness has been a common theme for both of them during the pandemic. GaleForceWINs, the podcast is the result.
And welcome to another edition of GaleForceWINs, and I'm Alan Dale. With me, as always, my good buddy from the East End of St. John's. How are you, Jerry?
I'm doing very well, Alan. First of all, I want to say that, as I've said to the both of you, this is the first time doing a recording since my hard drive failed. So technically, Alan, you and I are on a call, and I'm pretty technical. We had a bit of trouble there the last time we were on a call. Anyway, I do want to do something. Before Judit, just 1 second, I want to thank a company here in town. So first of all, a shout out to Boom IT, who does a lot of the technical work for me and my computers. But they told me that this iMac, they couldn't actually fix. So they referred me to Avalon Tech and Taylor, get that now, on Peach Street. So I want to put a shout out to Avalon Tech and Taylor for actually bringing my iMac back to life for the new hard drive. They did a phenomenal job. The iMac is really difficult to work on, apparently, because the glass is easy to break. So anyway, 2 thumbs up, we have that done. But I want to just say, Judith, I've seen your posts on LinkedIn. I have a feeling that you'll be a wonderful guest with Alan and I. And, there's a couple of things that you've posted in particular, the one about a side hustle, how to succeed at your side hustle really grabbed my attention. So with no further ado, I'm going to let Alan take it over and we'll have a nice chat.
Absolutely, Jerry. Thanks very much. And I'm excited to hear Judith's story. I'm all about entrepreneurship, and I do too love the side hustle, and I can't wait to dive right into it. So Judith, without further ado, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for having me. I have to tell you that when first Jerry reached out to me, my inner imposter just kicked in. And when I look at the list of the people who you guys invited, like amazing people who I know and I used to work with, like Andrew Parsons and John Steele and Craig Rowe, Kevin O'Shea. And I was like, oh my God, what am I doing here? What am I going to talk about? Like, nobody can be possibly in the story, right? Because it's just I'm just an average girl and from Hungary. So yes, this is my story. So I was born and raised in Hungary, behind the Iron Curtain, if you know the term in the communist era, which was over in 1989. So I was always ambitious. I always looking for challenges. So after graduation from high school, I was off to go to law school. And I graduated from law school 5 years later with a doctorate degree in law, and hence the name doctor, hence the prefix in my name, the doctor. So I'm a legal doctor. I'm not a medical doctor. And after 3 years of articling in Hungary, so 8 years of training to become a practicing lawyer, I started practicing criminal law and civil law as well. Then I had, along those years, I had my kids. I have 2 beautiful daughters. And with my husband 10 years ago, we just decided that we would uproot our family in Hungary and we would move to either New Zealand or Canada. But because Canada is closer to Europe, we decided to come to Canada. So, and then we started, researching where we should go with a family that is a beautiful place, and raise a family, 2 little daughters at the time. They were 6 and 7, and so we found Newfoundland, and I decided that I want to do a master's in gender studies. because I was always into women's rights and women's issues and equality and diversity. And so I applied for MUN and I got accepted. So I started my master's at Memorial University 10 years ago. And so we arrived to Newfoundland and with 4 suitcases and 2 kids. That's true story. We had no money, not much. We didn't have acquaintances. We didn't have family. We didn't have friends. We were just the 4 of us. And then we knew that we have to make this work. There is no plan B. It's gotta work out. So, and little did I know that, like, I didn't know anything really about Newfoundland. So we definitely didn't choose Newfoundland for the weather, right? But I didn't know much about Newfoundland, but I thought that I could speak English when we first arrived. But in those first days, I just had to realize that now I don't speak English. So I went through a really difficult time when I was doing my master's, and I really struggled with the language. And obviously, this became one of my biggest motivation as a coach and consultant, as I'm now, that I help people from new immigrants and new Canadians, and help them to build the confidence to speak the language. Because I remember orientation day at Memorial University, Noreen Golfman was cracking jokes and the entire audience was laughing out loud, and I was sitting there and hey, I don't understand the word what this woman is talking about. So this is how it all started. Yeah, 10 years ago.
Judith, I want to take you back to the beginning of your conversation. First of all, I'm absolutely amazed at your journey already. But I want to say to you right out of the gate that I can't believe that you didn't think your story wasn't as fascinating and interesting as all those other people that you named. I'm sure they're going to watch this episode and listen to your story and be thinking to myself, I'm not sure that I should be in there with Judith. So you've got a great story to tell. I'm curious about your passion for gender and diversity studies. Did that start in where you came from, or where does that root itself?
Yeah, I have to tell you that Hungary at the 10 years ago wasn't the country that it is now. And I think it lagged behind Canada in terms of equal rights and equality and diversity. And I was working in a heavily male-dominated industry because, I don't know, but at the time that, like, I would say 70% of the lawyers were all men. So all the judges were, not all, most of them were men, and lawyers, especially in the criminal field, the criminal area, all were men. So I had a firsthand experience of what it is to be a woman in a male-dominated industry. And this is very important for when we will be talking about the future, because, and I don't want to run ahead, but we just have a tech startup. It's called Even Hand Group. And Even Hand Group is focusing on helping women in male-dominated industries, but let's talk about later.
We'll talk about that later. So yeah. Fascinating. I understand where this is rooted now. Tell me a little bit, before we go really deep down the path here, tell me a little bit about Hungary. What is that like? Our audience will be curious to know.
Hungary is an Eastern European country, and it is modern, and Budapest is the capital city, is one of the most gorgeous cities to visit. And I always tell people that I would love to go to, I love going to Hungary, visiting, but not necessarily a place where I would want to raise my kids, especially because, well, it's very complex, but the political situation and the economic situation. People, the unemployment rate is pretty high. People are depressed, so, and not as friendly as they are in Newfoundland and Canada.
Well, Alan, on that note, I just want to delve in a little bit to the decision. That's amazing what you just described. The decision to move. How long did that take between you and her husband to make? It's not something you said on a Sunday and then you packed up on a Monday. How did that, and what kind of emotion did that bring?
Yeah, that's interesting. Those times that we really wanted to provide a better future for our kids. So, and we thought that probably if we could give them a language to speak on a native level, then this would be a huge benefit for them. So it took about a year, and obviously it came like all these mixed emotions of leaving family and jumping right into it, into the unknown, because as I said, that there were no support behind us. We didn't have friends. We didn't have a job lined up, nothing. We just decided to move, and it all came with very mixed emotions. But in hindsight, 10 years later, that was the best decision ever that we could make.
I guess I need to, where does this courage come from? Like, not many people would take two little kids, husband, and with no job, nothing, and a little uncertainty, maybe even of the language and everything. Like, where does the courage come from to just say, we're going to do it? The drive to provide a better life for your kids must be so intensely strong, but it's a tremendous amount of courage. Talk to me a little bit about that.
And it is curiosity. Like, I am curious about other people, other cultures, other languages. How do they live? How do they feel? What do they do? And then when we got here and all of a sudden we started celebrating Halloween. All of a sudden we started celebrating Thanksgiving, and it was amazing. But yes, what the motivation behind the move was curiosity. What's behind this country? Yeah. What else?
It's funny. It's interesting that you pick up on how do other people live and stuff. And I'll tell you a funny story. I have some very, very good friends that grew up in the former Yugoslavia. Specifically, they grew up in Sarajevo. And I remember I had them over for dinner when they newly arrived in Canada. And we had turkey with cranberry sauce, kind of sweet cranberry sauce. And they ate the turkey with the cranberry sauce. And they said to me, "We've never had meat with jam on it before." I kind of thought that was a funny way to express it, but very interesting. So tell me about what it felt like arriving in Newfoundland and then understanding the complexity of the Newfoundland culture as well, because Newfoundland, many would argue, is a very different culture than even the rest of Canada. So tell me what that was like when you first arrived.
So can you imagine that you're walking on the street and you don't know anyone? You go to places you don't know anyone. So there's no friends coming, on the street, and you can't say hi to anyone because you don't know anyone. It's like everybody's completely stranger. And obviously we started building some relationships and connections at the university because I started my master's right away. And then also the school where my kids went to, they went to Rennie's River Elementary School. And that's where the real friendship begun. And when we started building like relationships and friendships and connections, and many of those connections are alive 10 years later. So it was amazing. And then one of my best friend, and we look at each other as family. So she and her family is my Newfoundland family. So we celebrated the last 5 years all Christmases and Thanksgiving and really so. And she showed me the depth of the Newfoundland culture. And I remember that for years, I didn't even understand what they were talking about, like Jig's dinner. What are you talking about? What is Jig's? Is Jig's like an animal or like a meat or what is it, right? Or the term yes by. I couldn't wrap my head around it. Like, what is it? When do you use the term yes by or no by or of course by? Like,
well, it's a term that you can use on many occasions, of course. That's fantastic. I love the way that you describe the relationships that started through your kids, right? Through it's amazing that no matter where we come from in the world, we can connect through our children. Isn't that incredible to think?
And what's even more incredible, that I celebrated my 40th birthday last year, and we invited 60 people, 60 Newfoundlander to my birthday party, and all like close friends. These are close friends of ours. 10 years later, we have 60 people who we could invite. So it's amazing.
It's like your own personal come from away musical.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm not sure, Alan. I have 60 friends I can invite.
Judith, this is a fantastic journey. And the kids and your husband have settled well to Newfoundland as well?
Yes, my husband, he has his own business, and he's a landscaper. He's an arborist, and he cuts these dangerous trees. And he also a hunting agent, so not an outfitter, but he's like a travel agent for hunters. So he attracts a lot of hunters to Newfoundland, and also attracting North American hunters to European hunts. So he's really into that business. And the kids are 16 and 17. So yeah, so they consider themselves Newfoundlanders first.
I got to introduce my Alan, Sebastian. He loves gardening and trees, and he also likes, anything to do with hunting. Cabela's, for example, as a place. So got to introduce my 14-year-old to your husband.
Yeah. Well, so it sounds like your husband's entrepreneurial, you're entrepreneurial. So tell us about where you are in the moment. What's happening now? What are you involved in?
So I used to work with the provincial government after graduating Memorial. I used to work with the Provincial Advisory Council on the status of women. And I had a fantastic mentor and friend who was also invited to my birthday party. And I'm not sure if you guys know Linda Ross. And she kind of navigated and held my career over the years. So I worked with the Department of Justice under the era of Andrew Parsons. And I used to work with the Human Rights Commission. And it took me years to build up the courage to leave the safety of the public service and start my own entrepreneurship. And the timing was funny. I said to my boss at the time that, you know what, I don't want my contract to be extended beyond April 1st. So, and this was March 1st, 2020. And as we all know, that March 15, we all went into lockdown, and then the world turned upside down. And ever since, nothing got back to normal. So it was an interesting timing to start my entrepreneurship. But I was like, hey, what could be a better time? Everybody's at home, so I have time to build my website. I have time to do online trainings. And so all of a sudden, I had a lot of time that I could channel the focus, the energy, my time, my money into building my entrepreneurship. And this is coaching and consulting business. So I started coaching and consulting in 2020 in the midst of COVID.
I have to tell you that
Go ahead. You can see we're jumping. Both of us are jumping at the bit to get to delve into that. I just want to say, I asked you about the decision-making process of leading into your move from Hungary. The comfort of a government job, you waltzed away from that. How long was that process? And were you operating a little side hustle, or was this a fairly abrupt making this happen?
Yes, absolutely. I was operating a side hustle. And after a while, so I had my clients who I coached for free. So I was volunteering my time, and I kind of did a training, and I helped people who I knew and then who were cooperative, so we could have weekly sessions together. But this kind of started to take up. And then what I realized is that my side hustle is taking up more headspace in my head than my own 9-to-5 job. So when I felt that, okay, the two are incompatible, because I don't have the time, not just the time, but I don't have the headspace to focus on my 9-to-5 job and then my side hustle. So this was when the turning point, when I decided that, okay, I think I could make a living of this.
Sound familiar, Jerry?
Yeah, very much so.
It sounds familiar.
Well, yeah, I mean, we'll delve into it, I guess, a little bit in terms of, for me, I've had a side hustle in wedding videos primarily for 30 years. But I can say to you, Judith, that, very, very, when you do a side hustle, it's really important that if you're getting a check from someone else, you give them your 100%. I understand exactly what you're saying about headspace, and it's really important to try and keep the two apart. The moment that they start colliding is when a real decision has to be made.
Yeah. Exactly. And it's a lot of mixed emotions, like guilt, that, okay, I should, help my clients rather than sitting here. And then, I should focus on here, but I know that I have things to do when I get home. So it's, this, and this can cause a lot of guilty feelings.
Judith, you described starting your consultancy business, your coaching business at the onset of the global pandemic. And the way you described it was with such a sense of optimism, you could almost feel it. Like you just said, okay, we'll flip this on its head and I'll take this time to build and do all those things. That's fascinating. That's a true entrepreneurial spirit. Your ability to pivot and move forward, even though the circumstances change around you. You're to be celebrated for that. One thing, though, that I wanted to go back on and to dive into a little bit deeper, you talk about when you were working in government, you had a mentor. Tell me about the importance of mentorship and how that gave you the courage to do this.
That's one mentor, but if I look at my career that I started, how many years ago, like 20 years ago, then I had 3 in total. So the first mentor I had in Hungary. And it's funny because all 3 of them, so I had the first in Hungary, and then the second was that I mentioned, Linda Ross at the advisory council. And the third one was a coach mentor, Brenda Callahan-Flight. So Brenda is a fantastic coach and consultant based in St. John's. And all 3 women has one thing in common, that they want to give back by helping others. So they lift themselves up by lifting others up. So this is the philosophy that I follow ever since. So I'm lifting myself up by lifting others up. And that's why I do a lot of volunteering at MUN. So I work with MUN, the MUN Edge, that's the graduate students. And I host a lot of workshops on self-confidence, self-esteem, how mid-career pivot, or the 3 key areas to achieve career success, I host webinars on side hustle, on how to overcome imposter syndrome, because this is the knowledge that they can't really get from anywhere else. Because let's say, for example, someone want to start a business. There are resources, like amazing resources in Newfoundland. They can get practical advice. Okay, so this is how you incorporate a business. This is how you pay taxes. This is how you, develop a business plan. This is, the business strategy, etc., etc. But no one tells you that you can do it. You can too do it. Because if I could, then you can too. And English is not my first language. And I know it's hard, but it's going to get better. And then you can do it. And it doesn't have to be your first language in order to succeed. That was one of my biggest limiting beliefs, that just because English is not my first language, I won't be able to succeed in any careers in an English speaking country, which is not true, because so many talented people speak multiple languages, and English is not their first language. So, and the other thing is that one of the biggest barrier that I can see in people is the language, but definitely second is self-confidence. So the imposter syndrome is so prevalent that, in fact, I think the thought that I'm not good enough is a greater pandemic than COVID itself, because I think I can't think of anyone who had never had thoughts that, okay, I'm not good enough to do this. I can't do this. I'm just, for whatever reason.
Yeah. I don't even know where to begin with all of that. That's fantastic. I love the way that you describe all of your mentors had one thing in common, and that was they celebrated other success. And that indeed is how they too became successful. And Jerry and I often use an expression, and many of our guests that we've had on board use the same expression, and it's quite apt for Newfoundland. And it goes like this, and I'm sure you've heard it, that a rising tide floats all boats. So when the tide rises, everybody will rise together. And that's exactly what your mentors were doing. And that the way you describe motivating people, again, was fantastic. Tell me about the feeling you get when you see people achieving their results. Tell me about that.
Well, that's priceless, invaluable, right? And when I have a client who comes to me with a big rock issue that they're having, and then we talk about it and then use a lot of techniques, and we work out a plan that what she's gonna do. And then she comes back saying that, oh my God, Judit, I wish I met you like years ago. It could have helped me for years ago to such good advice that you gave me. And I never thought I would be, capable of doing this. And then I was, and I felt so empowered. And this is just, sometimes I got just goosebumps, and I don't want to believe it that, oh my God, this is happening. So it is amazing to see how other people succeed. And especially my focus is on career, because I'm sure you know that we spend 1/3 of our waking hours at our jobs, whether it's entrepreneurship, probably even more, but even just a 9-to-5 job, an average person spends 1/3 of their waking hours at doing their work. So it's so important that we love it, and then we create or we design our career path, because it's not a lifetime commitment. To have a job, it's not a lifetime commitment, right? So if you don't like it, we have to create and design our own dream career path. And it's easier than most people would think. But obviously this comes into some neuroscience and some cognitive behavioral therapy. And I also trained in neuro-linguistic programming, which is how to change our personal reality with the power of language. So the thoughts we think, and the words we use are determine our future. So how important to, to choose our words and thoughts carefully, because this is in our control.
Alan, I just want to jump in there. There's so much to unpack with your conversation with you, Judith. But I think back to the side hustle piece, because I think that's an important, I feel, and I know Alan feels the same, as a part of the Newfoundland psyche and the Newfoundland like rising tide lifting all boats. I think that we as a population, and then I speak to some of the work term students working with me at Newfound Marketing, and I say to them, look, 30 years ago, I started a side hustle. I didn't anticipate trying to make, $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 or $30,000 a month. No, I was passionate about what I was doing. And even if I only made $1,000 in a month, as long as I had my other career, take that $1,000 and invest it. Wow, in 30 years, you'd be amazed at how much you have. So I wanted to make a point to anyone listening to us talking here, is that I don't think that we need to be so far ahead with our thinking that we're bringing in so much money that it's an overwhelming operation. Alan says something really well about getting the gig. Frankly, GaleForceWINS is just that. Just start something, do it, start small and see what happens. Who wants to jump in on that point?
Yeah, this is amazing. And then when I talk about side hustle, because this is a relatively new term, the term side hustle. And when I try to define it, obviously we can define it in many, many ways, but the essence of a side hustle is that it's an activity that has the potential to bring some extra cash in, right? But that's an essential part of it. But it's not the only reason why people do it. So many people do the side hustle because they're bored at their jobs. So they want something to do that they're passionate about. Other people want to have, greater flexibility, or looking for a greater work-life harmony. I don't call it balance, but I think it could be in harmony. Or again, other people want to help others, like make a positive change, and they don't feel that they make any positive change in their day jobs, right? So we have so many motivations that why we can start our side hustle. Money is not the only one, but it's part of it. And I always encourage people to find a thing that you're so passionate about that you would do it even for free. And if you would do it even for free and then you make some money with that, that's a win-win. It's bonus.
Yeah, I remember.
Alan wants to jump in there, don't you?
No, I 100%. I remember being on a conversation with a group of entrepreneurs in Pakistan, and one of them described the money aspect of his entrepreneurial journey as just being the byproduct of the whole thing. He said the money is a byproduct of the whole thing.
Yeah.
I love what I do. I'm inspired by the people around me. I live to do this, and the money, it's just the byproduct. It's not the reason I'm doing it. And I thought that was such a refreshing way to look at it. But you're right. There's many motivators behind why we have the side hustles or the side gigs or however we describe them nowadays. So, okay. So I'm going to stop this portion in the moment. So again, I'm going to reflect right back to the very beginning. How could you possibly have thought that you shouldn't be in the conversation with all those other people? We'll stop there again. Now tell me, what's over the horizon? Because clearly you've had a great journey to get to where you are now, making a true impact where you are in the moment. So when we look over the horizon, what's there?
So I believe that I make an impact on a very local scale. So I hope that I make a difference in my client's life, in the company's life that I work with, in the solopreneur's life that I work with. But I think it's time to package all my experience, my knowledge, my background, everything in one and make a difference on a global scale. And this is Even Hand Group. And Even Hand is a startup company, an education startup company that we incorporated the business with my business partner. And then right now we're building a platform. It's a mobile app that would contain micro learning content. So like 1 to 2 minute videos for women who work in predominantly male dominated industries like the technology industry, oil and gas, energy, you name it. And we want to help these women to own their space in these industries. And then not only that, but we want to work with companies to change the workplace culture. So it's not the women who want to fit the mold, who will fit the mold in order to succeed, but also work together with businesses and educate businesses and give them the resources. So how you want to create an inclusive workplace where you're leveling the playing field for women and men. Because especially in Newfoundland, there is a need for more talent in these industries. And why don't you want to tap into the talent pool of women?
100%. 100%. We need that globally, of course. So tell me, what are your initial industries that you're focusing on, or is it defined to that point yet?
Yes, it is technology. That's the step number one. And then we go on to construction and oil and gas and like oceans energy.
Right. And so these micro courses, I love the format. A couple of minutes, get the information, yes. Move on. Tell me some of the themes that those cover. What are the thematic lines of those?
So we want to start building the self-confidence and help women have the healthy self-esteem and self-confidence and overcoming imposter syndrome, and then move on to like mentorship, sponsor, how to find a mentorship, how to find a sponsor, how to negotiate a salary raise, how to ask for a promotion, how to navigate the workplace that is so hard to navigate, right? So it's all these bits and pieces of information, and it's constant reinforcement for women. So they would get a push notification every other day that, hey, today's, I don't know what the message would be, but they would watch this 1 minute video and with something at the end that they can incorporate into their days so they can make their career better bit by bit.
Very, very applied, very practical. Fantastic. Jerry, your thoughts on it?
I just think, I got to ask this question, Judit. Why is this still a topic in 2021? Like, I grew up with a single mom who was an amazing woman. She was intimidated, however, I will tell you, about, the business world and much of the workplace. That being said, she did an amazing job of giving me positive influences. But I also have a wife who's a teacher, and I encourage her to do as much as possible. I don't understand, frankly, why women are not advancing, and maybe it's too deep a topic to get into right now, but if you could just touch on it a little bit, because my influences have pretty well been women. So, and I'm not sucking up to you right now. It's the truth.
Well, it's a very heavy topic. Obviously, it has its own socio-cultural background. It has political reasons and all sorts of things. But I think that today is not enough to empower women, because I believe that women, so it's enough of empowerment and enough of telling women that, oh, you can do it, But now let's try to make those changes in, let's say, for example, in the workplace that will help women to succeed, right? So systemic change, which is still in need of systemic changes.
100%.
I like that answer, actually, Alan, because you're right. You know, the changes in the workplace, the changes in some of the male thinking, I think is definitely important. But the empowerment of women is something that is really, really, really important. And frankly, when I lament my mom's experience in life, you know, I think that she could have had someone like you as a coach. She passed away in June, as many of our viewers know, but, you know, it's too bad that she never had someone like you. So hopefully we empower someone, some young lady who listens to this today. Alan, to be honest with you, there's so much here, from Hungary to starting your own business. Your husband has a business, 2 young daughters, 60 people going to your party. I mean, it's just wonderful to have you in this community. And I just say thank you for coming on to GaleForceWINS, but also thank you for being part of the Newfoundland fabric. Thank you.
And Judith, Jerry touched on your husband there one other time, and Jerry talked about both of us having very strong women in our lives that ground us, that mentor us, that are there with us on our journey as we try new and different things and support us. Tell me about the importance of having that supportive family dynamic, that partner in your life that supports you, that gives you that foundation.
Yeah, I couldn't have succeeded without him, obviously. So we've been together for 20 years now. So it's been a long relationship, but he's really a feminist. He doesn't consider himself a feminist, but he is, because the tremendous support that I received from him in the last, I don't know how many years. So it's just as important. And speaking of man, this is one thing that we try to build in Even Hand, is a male allyship. So you have no idea how important, and what you're doing now is kind of the essence of male allyship, is how to support women, how to support other men to change their mind and support women.
Right.
And it's so critical.
Judith, again, I don't know where to begin. What a wonderful conversation we've had here today. We always ask our guests to leave the audience with their own small piece of advice. You've had a wonderful journey. You're making a difference. The horizon is bright. What would that piece of advice be?
Well, it's there is something that in my mind, like constantly every single day, that, and these are not my words, it's I'm not sure if you heard about Dr. Joe Dispenza. He's a brilliant man. He's a neuroscientist, and he says that your personality creates your personal reality, called your life. And your personality consists of how you think, how you act, and how you feel. And if you change how you think, how you feel, and how you think, how you feel, and how you act, you will change. You will be able to change your environment.
100%. I couldn't agree more with exactly what you said. And honestly, try to live by that myself. I understand that what Jerry and I are doing here in GaleForceWINS is sending positive messages, talking to people who will inspire others, in hope that people that are inspired will go on and do great things and do good things, help their community. And you're a big part of that. Jerry, what a wonderful conversation we had today. What are your final thoughts here?
Well, I just think that we made the right decision in reaching out to you, Judith, to bring you on. Your digital footprint is one of overflowing positivity. And, it's curious. I see some people on social media deciding to be critical of this, that, and the other thing. And I never understood that. Why do we need to be critical of things? We can be constructively critical, but I think what you're doing, and it's just so important. Like Alan and I started this in December of 2020. And we had no intention of making any money. We had no intention of any gender. We've quite proudly, I think, Alan, we've had as many women as men. But I will tell you, Judith, that it was a couple of times there we had a bunch of men in a row. And my wife said to me, you're getting a little bit lopsided there now. Time to start getting some women on board. So again, we have no agenda in terms of any gender or anything like that. But I tell you, I have two wonderful nieces I've mentioned before in Halifax. I hope they watch this episode, because if the more we empower everybody, the better off we'll be in these communities that we live.
Amen.
Well, another wonderful edition of GaleForceWINs, and what a pleasure it was to be in conversation with Judit Lovas. And here's a person who has a genuine understanding and desire for lifelong learning, never gives up, continues the educational journey, wants to pass on her experiences to others, credits her mentors for where she is today, goes on to inspire others to do wonderful things. This is, in essence, a rising tide floating all boats right in front of us. I like to leave the audience with my own piece of advice. And quite frankly, Judith, and again, I go back to the very beginning. I can't believe that you didn't think you should have been on the conversation with all those other people, because you sure should have. And those people will be listening to you saying, wow, they'll be on their back foot. But here's my piece of advice. And that is, quite simply, the world needs more Judit Lovas. So thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to GaleForceWINs. That's GaleForceWINs, WINS.com.